When you think about businesses like Allbirds or Skims that are selling through the roof, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But what's often overlooked is the business behind the business that makes it all possible. For millions of businesses, that's Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. With Shop Pay, you can boost conversions by up to 50%, meaning fewer abandoned carts and way more sales. Whether your customers are scrolling online, strolling through your store, or browsing social media, Shopify ensures you're ready to sell wherever they are. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/DAX, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/DAX to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/DAX.
O'Reilly. Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Chris Blair in 15 minutes. Joe Healy at the bottom of the hour. Talk some Tigers with Chris, some SEC baseball with Joe. Looking forward to all of that. It's spring football time around the Southeastern Conference, and I am certainly not going to dive into the all 22 of all 16 SEC teams. But the SEC did, the ESPN. Let's try that again. ESPN did put up a preview of all 16 SEC spring football campaigns, and I just want to kind of pluck one or two things out of each of them very quickly as we move forward. I believe they're in alphabetical order. Yes, they are. So it starts with Alabama, and it's interesting what Kalen DeBoer can do in year two, because he went 9-4 in year one, and nobody there is going to think that's humorous or acceptable in any way, shape, or form. This was the most obvious happening to forecast. Whoever filled in for Nick Saban was never going to be able to live up to that standard. And I'm not suggesting Kalen DeBoer can't win the SEC this year or sometime soon. I'm not suggesting he can't compete for championships at Alabama. I'm not telling you he'll never win one. I'm just telling you it's not going to look like it did. And Matt's been saying that forever, but anybody with a reasonable mind knew that was going to happen. It's impossible, nearly, to stay at the very pinnacle of the sport for 14 years. And Kalen DeBoer's not going to do that. And he certainly didn't last year. Kenny improved this year with Ty Simpson at quarterback, Austin Mack, who was initially signed with Washington, and DeBoer. Then you got Keelan Russell, the freshman they're all excited about at quarterback. What does that look like for Alabama? I think that how this season goes in Tuscaloosa is going to be really fascinating, because most people think if they lose 3 or 4 games that DeBoer may be out, because they're just not going to sit around and tolerate that. They're unreasonable. They're unrealistic. They're entitled, and they won't tolerate it. And I'm curious to see if it happens. Let's go to Arkansas. Beck, I don't like Coach Pittman's chances. I'll tell you why. They should have fired him 2 years ago. They didn't, because it would cost too much money. And now you're looking at a season where he's still the coach. You still don't have any talent. And this is what their schedule looks like. They have road games at Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at LSU, and at Texas. They also have home games with Notre Dame, A&M, Auburn, and Missouri.
Their schedule was crazy last year, and so now it just flips from home and away, and now it's even harder. So, yes.
Coach Pittman.
Not good.
Will collect a large sum of money before Christmas this year. That'll be good for him. He can get out on the lake and drink some cold beers. Speaking of folks that aren't winning very much, Hugh Freeze is 5-7 last year at Auburn. That dog is not going to hunt. Now, they're recruiting really well. The question is Jackson Arnold any good? Like, that's the question everybody is now going to have to ask when you talk about Auburn. Nobody thought Peyton Thorne was the answer. I certainly didn't. And it didn't look like at Oklahoma last year in his second year in college that Jackson Arnold was the answer. Now, was that just such a toxic situation that no one can excel in it as bad as Oklahoma was on offense last year? I don't know. I've seen Hugh Freeze win with less talented quarterbacks than Jackson Arnold. But that's probably going to be the guy that they lean on. And, well, you got Cam Coleman and a whole host of good wide receivers out there. They got to make that work. But all three of those coaches that we just talked about right off the top, Bama, Arkansas, and Auburn, all under some fire this year. And then we get to the next guy on the list, and that's Billy Napier. So it's just we looked at the Southeastern Conference this year, and correct me if I'm wrong, but nobody lost their job this past year. Everybody kept their job. Well, now we're on school number 4 here, and they all may lose their jobs if things go sideways. And I'm 100%. I will say with 100% certainty, one of these guys is not back in 2026. Now, I would bet a lot of that would be on Pittman because I don't think they have any chance against that schedule. But it could be any of them. And Napier is the next guy. Now, DJ Lagway, we found out yesterday in the afternoon, is going to be held on basically a pitch count here in the spring. He is the golden hope for that entire operation in Gainesville. Without DJ Lagway, this thing ceases to exist. Billy Napier would have been fired last year if Lagway didn't save things down the stretch by beating LSU and Ole Miss. Now, he did beat LSU and Ole Miss. So let's see if he can build upon that. But again, you're at LSU, you're at Miami, you're at Texas A&M, you're at Ole Miss, and you play Georgia away from home. It doesn't get a lot easier for the Florida Gators. Georgia, 3 losses. Lost 2 regular season, lost 1 in the playoff. They don't lose 3 games a lot with Kirby Smart at the helm. Carson Beck moves on, and as always, you're going to lose a lot of folks to the draft. They lost 4 offensive linemen that are going to have to protect a new quarterback. So I think that there's a lot of rebuilding that has to go on. And we all kind of just thought after Georgia won 2 titles in a row and probably was the best team the year before that, but got tripped up by Bama in the title game and they didn't have the schedule to get in, that, well, Georgia's still going to be the best of the best. They're the team that nobody can beat. They're the team that's going to go on this crazy college football run. And then they lose 3 games and it's like, okay, are they as infallible? Like, it's still not Saban. It's Kirby. I'm not at all thinking that Georgia's going to fall off a cliff here. But, 3-loss season is going to let a little bit of doubt creep in at least. We'll see if they can restock the shelves. Speaking of coaches that are embattled, Kentucky went 4-8 this past year. They can't move the ball at all. So how do you rescue that? I don't know. What I feel like is probably unlikely is that Zach Calzada shows up and rescues Tennessee football. And if you're thinking to yourself, wait, that guy? Yeah, that guy. Texas A&M, Auburn, Incarnate Word, Kentucky. And they've tried this import a quarterback thing year after year after year. It was Levis, then it was Leary, and then this past year it was Vandegrift, and now they're going to try Calzada. Who knows? But I have very little confidence in Kentucky is going to get this thing righted, and I don't know that they're entirely interesting in the spring either. Jeff Levy at Mississippi State, 2-10. They lose Michael Van Buren, but you're going to hope that you get Blake Shapen back and that he can play some quarterback. He missed the last 8 games last year. Missouri won 10 games last year. Is anybody buying what Drink is selling? Beck, are you buying what Drink is selling at this point? I mean, that's back-to-back 10-win seasons.
I don't think so.
Why?
They had an easy schedule.
Okay, that's true. Lose Luther Burden. Brady Cook moves on, and they bring in Bo Pribula, who drew a bunch of attention because he wanted to jump in the transfer portal when Penn State's trying to compete for a national championship. Well, he ended up at Missouri, but you've got to replace your playmakers, and that's obviously something that is going to be more difficult at Missouri than a lot of places in the SEC because it's tougher to recruit to Missouri. But I'll give Drink a little bit of credit at Missouri for winning double-digit games back-to-back years. We took that for granted in Baton Rouge forever and ever with Les Miles, and it turns out sometimes it can be tougher to win 10 games. Oklahoma, Brent Venables on the hot seat. How many hot seat coaches can we have in this league? He wins 6 games last year. They bring in a new coordinator from Washington State, bring in John Mateer from Washington State, and can they rescue things? They don't get any favors with the schedule. We know that. You still got to play all those teams that you had to play this past year. You got to play Ole Miss. You got to play LSU. You got to play Alabama. You got to play Florida comes in. You got to play Tennessee in Knoxville. So it's tough. You got to play Texas. There's there's a lot on that plate for the Sooners. I don't think it's going to work out with Brent Venables. Those are my 2 cents.
Yeah, how about over under SEC coaches fired next season? 3.
Over
3. So you think there's going to be 4 SEC coaches fired?
That's only a quarter of the league.
Yeah.
I mean, Pittman, yes.
Yes.
Venables, I feel pretty good about.
But it may appear only if, Lagway doesn't,
And then I think, how many games Kentucky going to win? 5?
Yeah, but they like Mark Stoops there. I don't think they're...
He took the job at A&M.
Well,
then
yeah,
came back and won 5 games.
I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. They're probably not too happy then.
Yeah, it's just I can't. That Bloom's probably off that road. He struck while the iron was hot. He struck while Florida was a mess and Tennessee was a mess and South Carolina was a mess. And then you had Mississippi State's your permanent, and they did what they could in a window where they could do it. And I don't foresee it being.
So how many do you have now? Is that 3 or 4?
I mean, I've gone through 6 that are possibles.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Hugh Freeze is going to get fired, but screw up, you can. I don't think Kalen DeBoer is going to get fired. Lose 4 games and watch what happens. Ooh. Lose that Iron Bowl and see what happens. And they're not infallible anymore. They got the same uniforms on. They play in the same stadium. They're with everybody else now. They were in a dogfight with everybody last year except LSU. So it's just not the same. So I can get there pretty quickly. South Carolina's interesting. Went 9-4. Got Sellers back. They'll come to Baton Rouge. Tennessee won 11 games. Is Nico ready to take the next step? Do they have the pieces on defense? Texas is Sarge Manning's time. Texas A&M. Mike Elko loses 4 of their last 5 down the stretch. I saw a good interview with him today where he's talking about they got to put more players in the NFL. They got to get more NFL players to College Station. I'm just curious. Do we think Marcel Reed's the answer? He looked great against LSU running around.
You look good against LSU.
Running around, but we'll see. And then your boys from Nashville.
Anchor down.
They will not be making a bowl this year. I will say that with confidence.
Yeah, they will.
They will not. They went 7-6, best season in more than a decade. First bowl since 2018, beat Bama. Don't think that's going to happen again this year.
All right. Well, they're not going to lose to Georgia State like they did last year. How about
could.
That? They're not
Why
going
not?
to, because they're not.
Let me look at their schedule. This is what we need. Charleston Southern, tough team to play.
Ooh,
no, they're fine.
That's a nail biter.
They're at Virginia Tech. They won that one last year.
They won that one.
You think they're going to win that one this year?
I think so.
That's spooky.
They got Georgia State again this year, but they don't have to go to Turner Field.
They don't have to go to the Braves.
They don't have to go to Turner Field. But they got listen to Vanderbilt. They're at Virginia Tech, at South Carolina, at Bama, at Texas, at Tennessee.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Plus LSU comes to them, and that's really the only really tough home game they've got.
That schedule's brutal, though.
Yeah, I know. I don't count Auburn and Kentucky as being that difficult. Missouri, maybe.
No.
That schedule's brutal.
They can win 6 games.
All right. Give me win or loss, Jordan, for Vanderbilt. Then we'll get to Chris Blair. Charleston Southern.
Win.
That's a win.
I'll give him a win.
At Virginia Tech.
That's a loss. Early season loss.
At South Carolina.
That's another loss. It's derailing already.
Georgia Southern. Georgia State.
We're back on track.
Utah State.
We're back on track.
At Bama.
Oh, that's smacked. They're smacked.
LSU in Nashville.
LSU, please do not lose this game. I'm going to go get that.
Missouri in Nashville.
That's a loss.
At Texas.
Ooh, blowout.
Home against Auburn.
They're crying at this point, but they might squeeze it out. I'm on the fence about that. I'll give them the dub. I'll give them benefit of the doubt.
Home against Kentucky.
Kentucky's terrible.
Yeah. Pavia, Magic.
At Tennessee.
Loss.
That's 5-7.
They're getting to 6, hon.
Brutal.
So it's been said.
They're getting to 6.
It's been said. It's been written. They're 5-7.
They're getting to 6.
Coach Lee, anchor down. All right, Chris Blair next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
We'll have Joe Healy coming up here in 15 minutes, setting the table for the SEC baseball weekend. Joe's usually with us in the first hour on Thursdays, but had a prior. Was good enough to give us some heads up on that, and we were able to shift him back into hour number 2. So Joe and the crew at D1 Baseball had a spirited discussion about who the number 1 team in the country should be, Tennessee or LSU, and so we'll get Joe's thoughts on that whole situation. But this is the time of the week where we talk to the voice of the Tigers. Chris Blair will be on the call for LSU and Texas A&M coming up on Saturday inside the PMAC. One of those Maroon teams will show up, and Chris will be there. Chris, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
How was the trip up to the Bluegrass? How was Rupp Arena?
Oh, it was Rupp Arena. It was a team that, I didn't feel good about the matchup for a number of reasons. One, it was senior night, and I looked it up that afternoon. Kentucky's been honoring their seniors since 1967, and now they're 53-6. So that's a tough one. And it's also, sandwiched where, they got embarrassed on Saturday by Auburn inside Rupp Arena. That doesn't happen often. And then they got to go to Missouri, this weekend. And while I think, already with 9 conference wins that are good into the NCAA tournament, I think the Cats were more about trying to figure out where they get seated, not only in Nashville, but obviously in the NCAA. So there was plenty of motivation for Kentucky. And after a 2-0 lead early for LSU, it was just an onslaught of blue. Next thing you know, you look up, it's 15-2, and then it's 50-23 at the half, and just kind of slipped away early, and there was no chance to even climb back in.
I'm curious, after watching the SEC for 17 games now, you and Coach Brady from courtside, like have you noticed the level of play elevating since you've gotten to Baton Rouge?
Oh, without question. It's when I got here in December of 2015, there was already talk that the SEC had made moves and were really working behind the scenes with their conference partners to improve men's basketball, because it's a goldmine financially. And it certainly helps. Football is the key driver, to make no mistake about that. But, when a league can get multiple teams in the NCAA tournament and multiple teams go deep into the, Final Four, that's good for the conference. And they made a very calculated move to improve basketball in this league. And, basically 10 years later, that's what you're looking at, a dominant league that really is great top to bottom, and it's not as top-heavy as it used to be. And when you look at teams like, Florida, which I think may be the best-looking built roster, Auburn obviously spent most of the time as number 1. They're certainly, they've got inside, they've got outside, they've got guys who multiple 1,000-point scorers and guys who are 22, 23 years old. It's a very heavy team. It's veterans, very talented team. And then when you mix in some of the true freshmen, many of which in this league are going to be first-round picks, that just goes to show you how tough this league is. And I've watched it get better over the last 8-9 years.
How many teams do you think could be Final Four good? I've been on record. I think that Florida and Auburn are national championship good. I can't quite get on board with Tennessee and Alabama because of one side of the floor hurting them a little bit. But as far as the Final Four goes, I think I could probably make a case for 5 or 6.
Yeah, I think 5 or 6 probably have the opportunity. I think Auburn and Florida, to be honest with you, if they don't make it to the Final Four, and that's not cutting down the nets and winning a title, but I think it's a disappointing year the way those rosters have been built and as well as they have played, and the level of competition and how they've handled that competition. And then I think you're probably right with Tennessee and Alabama. I think Tennessee suffers sometimes from a scoring standpoint. And I think Alabama suffers on the defensive end. And again, at times relies too heavily on the 3-point shot, and you pick a night where you're not shooting well. I think that's what's hurt Alabama really over the last 3 or 4 seasons, of being able to win a national title. Is just you got to be able to have that shot going, for multiple nights to get through this tournament. But I think you could make an argument. And frankly, after watching Kentucky in person, and I've seen them play a ton on TV, they also live and die with the 3-point shot. But when they're on, like they were on Tuesday night, there's not many teams in the country going to beat them.
Yeah, Mark Pope's done a good job with him offensively, for sure. Let's transition over to baseball, Chris. I know you've been paying attention as you've been in and out with hoops as well, but I've watched Derek Curiel now for 3 weeks, and it feels like he's not going to slow down anytime soon. What's your impression been of the young freshman?
Yeah, he's phenomenal. I mean, I think we talked about it last week. I just think his ability to slow the game down, and again, we'll see once you hit SEC competition and the pitching, not only is very good on the starting end, but very good and deep throughout. We'll see. And, again, there's a ton of freshman players you can go back, and you probably much more than I, and talk about, sensational freshman career. But he's certainly off to that. That's for sure. I think, for me, coming off the last couple of games, having watched from afar, I'm tickled for Josh Pearson, because here's a guy that I think has had some big moments in his career, decided to come back another season. I'm sure a lot of it had to do to be able to play with his younger brother, which they haven't done a lot. But he also knew, hey, look, I was on the last couple of years, I've been on a team with pretty good talent. And I've not been able to be the everyday guy, but I certainly have contributed. It speaks a lot to his team mentality, which I certainly applaud him for. But of all the people on this roster coming in, you knew he had to know, I've got to earn every minute if I want to get at bats and get innings in the field. And I think here of late, he's put up a pretty good argument that whether you want him in left field, right field, or second base, it's kind of hard to take him out of the lineup. So I think I'm impressed with the way he has attacked his final year here at LSU. I know how tough it's going to be to get minutes on the field, and I've got to go out, and every opportunity I got to make the most of it. So I've been thrilled with watching the way he has played of late, and I think it's going to be hard for coach to take him out of the lineup.
You watched Stephen Milam play a lot last year. Now he's moved over to shortstop and has played that flawlessly to this point, 3 weeks into the season. What have you seen from him on the defensive side? Because I've been impressed.
No surprise whatsoever. I mean, Jay joked with me many a time last year about, wherever you want to put him. I've got confidence, put him anywhere in the field. And again, he's one of those freshmen I talk about that you just kept waiting last year for them to, he's going to sit back some. He can't have this type of season. And frankly, I think Stephen got stronger as the season went on, may have been the best player, one of the best players on the team, when the season ended in Chapel Hill. He's the real deal, man. I mean, you talk about a baseball junkie. That guy's life revolves around baseball and has for a long, long time, and that's why you can tell he's fundamentally sound. Wherever you put him, he knows the right footwork. I just think he's impressive, and it's great to have him, wearing the purple and gold, that's for sure.
You've been around Jay Johnson since he got here. How do you think he feels about handing the ball to a freshman in Kason Evans with the game on the line at the end? He's kind of shown a tendency to do that now for the last 2 weeks. That's the guy they're going to when it gets tight.
Yeah, I mean, being around Jay, I mean, he talked about it in his first year about this is the type of, I've understood this is the type of arms you have to be successful in this league. And now having gone through the gauntlet of the SEC and having gone through the rigors of making it all the way to a national title game in Omaha, I just think he now has the people on his roster that he envisioned he would need 3+ years ago, which is I've got to be able to find these freshman arms that are the best across the country so that I have no problem whatsoever, 100% faith to put the ball in his hands with the game on the line. I think he's just finally, that's where this program has developed into, and it's not by accident. It was by design from Coach Johnson.
LSU and Texas A&M Saturday in the PMAC 3:00 tip. You can hear the voice of the Tigers, Chris Blair, along with John Brady on pregame at 2:30 here in Baton Rouge. That's Eagle 98.1, our sister station. He'll be on baseball duty for some of the other of the weekend as well. Chris, we appreciate the time. We'll talk next week.
You got it, buddy.
That is Chris Blair. Always appreciate a little bit of his time. Matt McMahon show in the books for the year, and they'll have Jay Johnson show coming up in a couple of weeks. I believe that's on Monday nights, but we'll check with Chris next week when we talk to him when that will air for the first time. It's right after the first weekend of SEC play, so looking very much forward to that. And again, we appreciate Chris giving us a little bit of time on Thursdays. Step aside, Joe Healy, D1 Baseball's SEC Extra team, best team in the country, Tennessee or LSU? We'll ask him next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is the website. Every car that is on the lot is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. Every single model in the Genesis line, from the entry level to the highest end vehicle, come with the same basic safety features. They're not going to cut corners on safety. You can get behind the wheel of a Genesis. You'll feel how comfortable it is. You can see how stylish the design is. You can see all the bells and whistles that they've got in the console. The brand ambassadors will walk you through all of it. But what you can't see from the outside is just how safe the vehicle is. All of them were given the IIHA top safety pick. Some were given the top safety pick plus. You can be guaranteed when you're driving in Genesis that you're in one of the safest vehicles on the road, and it's a luxury model as well. Go by and see them on Airline at Pico across from Women's Hospital. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. You can find them online at genesisofbatonrouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Towards the weekend, Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. On Thursdays, we talk to our guy Joe Healy from D1 Baseball's SEC Extra Team. See their podcast, Highway to Hoover, wherever you find your podcast, and certainly subscribe up to D1 Baseball's SEC Extra package for all the college baseball news. Tigers, #1 in the country as we move into the final week of non-conference play. Joe gives us some time here on this Thursday. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing well. I, heard it a little bit from Tennessee fans, given that we have LSU #1, but I guess that's to be expected.
Look, I was going to ask you that because I saw you kind of mediating a discussion between Kendall Rogers and Aaron Fitt where y'all were talking about who was going to be the #1 team in the country, and both of them felt like it was LSU's at this current juncture. Where do you stand on that situation? I realize it's not all that significant, but it is a local story, so I'll let you talk about where you see those two teams at the top of the country.
Yeah, I think it's close. I mean, I think they have a lot of things in common, frankly, with why they are where they are. For both teams, what stands out to me most is, the incredible depth. And I get that depth always looks good in early March, more so than it does in May. But both teams are really, really stout in terms of just guys they trust going to. I think from an LSU perspective, I think about Michael Braswell, a guy who started every single game last year, and Jay Johnson was steadfast in that. And this year, he's just kind of a piece. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to him. I just mean that there's so much depth that he's a guy that's, in a platoon situation. Tennessee's kind of the same way, where they have freshmen like Levi Clark, Jay Abernathy, Manny Marin, who they didn't necessarily need to be good right away, but they're awesome right away. LSU has a similar thing with Derek Curiel. So anyway, regardless, they have a lot of things in common. And to me, the difference between 1 and 2 is a lot smaller than the difference between 2 and kind of the rest of the field right now. To me, those two teams have separated themselves from the pack, and LSU got, in part, our #1 vote, honestly, because we had them ahead of Tennessee to begin the season. And through 3 weeks of non-conference play, we just haven't seen enough necessarily to just flip that order, because right now it looks like maybe Tennessee's playing better, but we just haven't seen enough to know.
I'm interested in you saying that about LSU kind of separating with Tennessee, because I'm looking at this and trying to be a little bit guarded, because last year LSU looked really good in February and they went to Houston and won 3 games in a tournament, kind of like they did this past weekend, and then they showed up to play the big bad SEC and started 3-12. So what gives you confidence that LSU right now is I mean, it's the depth obviously, but do they have the star power? Do you feel like Cade Anderson is an ace at this point?
I do. So on that second question, yeah, I really do. And it's not just from the numbers now, because you're right. Like through 3 weeks against the first 2 weeks, not great competition. We can't read too much into the statistics, but it's not just my eyes. It's the eyes of scouts and evaluators saying, yeah, this guy's the real deal. So there's that element there. But yes, it's the depth, but to me, it's specifically what they have depth in. So on the mound, like, I don't want to just assume they're set with Ianson and Anderson and Shores, but those 3 guys have been super solid. Kaysen Evans has been a real revelation. William Schmidt, he's got some things to clean up maybe in terms of command, but, statistically, he's been awesome and his stuff has been great. They haven't had Gavin Guidry back. And to me, if you're talking about where do you need depth in college baseball, you know this as well as I do. At some point, whether it's in a regional or whether it's in Omaha or what have you, if you're going to be a team that makes a deep postseason run, there's going to be games where you're going to have to turn the ball over to your 9th arm. Mm-hmm. And if your 9th arm is somebody like what LSU has kind of at the back of their bullpen, you're going to be in a lot better shape than basically any other team in the country. So the mound side of it is actually what stands out to me most when we talk about depth and how is this team different.
We figured 3 weeks ago A&M would be in this discussion. They are not right now. They seem to be kind of wandering lost. If I gave you a crisp $5 bill to wager whether or not they were going to be a regional host team, where would you wager that?
I would still go yes, but I have some waning confidence in them. And it's not, to me, it's not just that it looks kind of bad or the bad body language or any of that. Like, I do think maybe there's been an underestimation of how valuable some of the leadership they've had the last few years. They had guys like Austin Boast and Ryan Targach, who weren't always necessarily the best players on the team, but they were solid contributors who had good heads on their shoulders and were leaders in a way that I'm not sure A&M has that right now. That's not to say it's a team of knuckleheads. I don't think that's true either, but I do think they are kind of looking around saying, like, who is our table setter here? Who's the guy that sets the tone? Maybe it's Jace Laviolette from a on-field standpoint, but I don't know, what kind of leader he is. So that's kind of what stands out to me there. I also think, it's first-time head coach, and this is the first time Michael Early, who's been a very hands-on hitting coach for his entire career, this is the first time he's been looked at as, okay, yeah, you're still working with hitters, but your time is also going to be divided up with talking to Jason Kelly about what you're doing on the mound and coming up with game plans and scouting reports, and you're doing, more media. Just there's a lot of things pulling for your attention as a head coach in the SEC, much less at one that was a preseason number one. And I have to wonder if that's just kind of an adjustment for everybody, because the offense has been the issue for A&M, frankly. And I have to wonder if some element of that is just that it's a different dynamic with Michael Early now being the head coach as opposed to being mostly solely focused on being the hitting coach.
I am higher than Florida than I think some people are, and that's hard to say because they're number 7 in the country. But I'm impressed, as always, with the stuff that they have on the mound. I've watched a little bit of that. And then I feel like they're swinging the bats pretty well as well. Brody today has been awesome. So where are you on the Gators?
I'm generally with you, but I will say they have been bitten by the injury bug worse than most so far this season. And so I do start to worry about a little of that. So Cade Kurland, I believe it was last weekend, separated his shoulder. And as you know, it's not just as simple as you can pop that sucker back in there and you're good to go. Like, there's a rehab period that goes with that. Pierce Coppola came out of his start early last weekend. Initially, it was kind of brushed off as like, yeah, it was nothing and he felt fine. We just took him out. There's been increasing concern in the days since that maybe it's more than what we initially thought. Kyle Jones, the big transfer from Stetson, who I loved in the fall, has played only 4 games this year. It's not looking great with him injury-wise. And so, look, they're still really talented. Brody Donay, you're right, has looked like maybe an SEC Player of the Year type of guy so far. So I still really like their club, but I'm going to need to see what the next or especially the first couple weeks of SEC play look like with a slightly more beat-up roster than I think we anticipated.
LSU welcomes Missouri in the opener, so we're not going to talk a lot about that right now. But Texas looms on the other side of that. LSU will go to Austin. They're off to a 10-1 start in year one under Jen Schlossnagle. How do you feel about his first Longhorns team through 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think it reminds me a little of Schlossnagle's first A&M team, which is when you look at the roster and you kind of shrug and you're just like, okay, like there's some nice players here. But I do think this is where coaching matters, and I can't put my finger on it. I'm not in the locker room with them. I'm not on the team bus with them or in the clubhouse, whatever. But the guy goes places and he just wins right away, sometimes with less than ideal rosters. And right now their pitching is fairly thin. I mean, they're relying in the bullpen heavily on Ruger Riojas, who, no disrespect, was a very good reliever at UTSA, but he was at UTSA. They're asking him to do a totally different thing now. Their rotation is, probably an arm short. They've used Cade Bing on Sundays, and he's not been particularly good. And other than that, they're looking at Jared Spencer, a guy who was a reliever at Indiana State, and then Luke Harrison, who's been injured most of the past 2 years. Now, Spencer and Harrison have been pretty good so far, but does that change when you start facing big-time offenses, big-time lineups like LSU's? The offense is old, so I like that part of it. That's the part that most reminds me of his early A&M, his first A&M team, because it's like just a really old, kind of unsexy position player group that's just going to battle and put together long at-bats, and they've got some power. They do a lot of things well, but whether or not they get enough pitching, I think, is going to determine whether they do like Schlossnagle's first A&M team and get to Omaha, or if this is just kind of a nice top 20-ish team that might host, might be a 2 seed, could maybe win a regional, but probably isn't a national title contender.
Joe Healy's our guest, D1 Baseball's SEC Extra Team. He's with us every single Thursday. He's kind of setting the table for the SEC weekend to come. I thought y'all had a good line on Highway to Hoover calling this SoCon Saturday, which is a football reference. So right before Rivalry Weekend, they play a bunch of teams and beat them by 50. And this weekend in the Southeastern Conference, not a lot of real sexy matchups. The tournaments are in the rearview mirror. A lot of teams just kind of resetting before conference play. Is there anything specifically that you're kind of looking at this weekend, or is it just kind of let's get to next week?
Yeah, I think the latter is definitely true. I mean, I'm going to see Troy play this weekend because that's a top 20 team, and there's not a ton like in the SEC, as you mentioned. So it's like, hey, let's go see a team I might not get to see otherwise. But I will say there are two series I kind of have my eye on. One is Xavier and Vanderbilt for a couple of reasons. One, the last time Vanderbilt hosted 2023, the team that eliminated them was Xavier. So there's a little scar tissue there. It's also an older team, so a lot of the guys who are on the Xavier roster now were also on that team in 2023. So that's interesting to me. And Vanderbilt's offense, after looking good early, much like Arkansas, everybody's like hyper vigilantly watching their lineups. They were pretty good early, but they've backslid. Last weekend, they lost 2 games to USC and UConn by scoring a combined 3 runs. Yeah. They lost both those games. So that's one. The other is Kentucky and Wofford. Obviously, LSU fans know all about Wofford. They saw them last year. Really scrappy bunch. They're going to steal a bunch of bases. They're going to take their walks. Their pitching doesn't really have velocity, but they throw a bunch of strikes. That's a team I think that can give Kentucky trouble. I still don't know what to make of Kentucky yet. They're winning games, which I think is, my hunch on Kentucky is that while they're obviously not as good as they've been the last couple of years, the idea that they're just going to go back to being kind of irrelevant, I don't think is right. I think they'll be better than what we think of as Kentucky baseball if you go back 5 to 7 years. But I really don't know how good or not they are. I think we'll learn a little something about them this weekend because I think Wofford is roughly a regional caliber team.
Enjoy some Troy baseball. We'll talk next week before the SEC gets cranked up in earnest. Thanks, Joe.
All right, Hunt. See you, buddy.
Joe Healy, D1 Baseball's SEC Extra Team. You can read about all the SEC teams over at the SEC Extra tab, and you can get their podcast a couple times a week, Highway to Hoover. It's he and Mark Etheridge. They do an awesome job, and we appreciate Joe for being flexible with us this week because he was out at the beginning of the hour where we usually have him, so we backed him up a little bit, and he was able to accommodate us, and we certainly appreciate that. So let's take one more time out and get out of here. It is a Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Look, sometimes you do a bathroom remodel because you just don't like what you see and you'd like to upgrade. Sometimes you need to. Sometimes you've got a situation where you've got some faulty equipment in your bathroom, whether it's plumbing, something in the shower that just doesn't work anymore. And if that's the case, don't just call the local handyman to come up there and see if he can't kind of put something that fixes it for a minute there. Just go get One Bath and Closets and get the thing fixed. He's got a master plumber that's available to you. They're a licensed contractor, bonded, insured. They can come in and handle your plumbing issues with the toilet in the bathroom and the shower. And they can certainly handle your flooring and all of that as well. They put vanities in. They can do tubs, tub to shower conversions, all that kind of thing. Again, sometimes it's a luxury you want to upgrade. Sometimes it's a necessity because what you've got is broken. Either way, you want to make sure that One Bath and Closets is your one-stop shop. Get the free consultation with David Duvall and his team this week. Just set it up. Go to OneBathAndClosets.com and get that process started. They've got financing options available, 18 months, 0%, same as cash if you qualify. It's One Bath and Closets. Go find them at OneBathAndClosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Join us at the Louisiana Outdoor Expo at the Lamar Dixon Expo Center next week, March 14th through the 16th. Head over to our front or back booth and register for your chance to win a U10 New Canoe, a compact, versatile kayak perfect for fishing and hunting adventures. Visit 1045ESPN.com for details. Also, join LSU Athletics and the Tiger Athletic Foundation for Bayou Traditions' second annual Gala of Louisiana Saturday night featuring Jordan Davis on the field in Tiger Stadium Saturday, May 3rd. We are giving you on-field access. Register to win a spot at our table at 1045ESPN.com. Support LSU student athletes NIL opportunities and reserve your table at lsutaf.org/events.
All right, so earlier today, I put in a refund request with an airline.
Okay.
Because we know that last weekend I elected to stay home instead of fly to Dallas for the tournament.
Yes, you did that.
Well, I was gonna bring my golf clubs, and I had to bring the equipment for the show, so I was gonna have to check a bag.
Yes.
So I paid for that when I checked in.
Okay.
And I didn't go. We canceled the flight.
Yes.
And I put in the refund request today. How do you think that's gonna go? I have low confidence.
Well, I would say depends.
They have record that I canceled the flight. That is very much there. And I put on the little comments, said canceled flight, wife had labor symptoms.
Yes.
Which is not a lie. It looks like a lie.
Yeah. Well,
but it's not.
I think it depends. I think it does depend on who the airline was. Now, I don't think we need to disparage.
We're not going to do that.
Who it was. However, if
they give me the refund, I'll give them a shot.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think you'll get it.
I would have lied and said my wife had the baby, so I couldn't make it.
I don't have a birth certificate. I get like George Costanza on Seinfeld. He didn't have a death certificate from the funeral he apparently went to.
Okay,
I don't have that, so I'm trying to keep it between the buoys. She did have symptoms. I did stay home. We did cancel the flight. I'd like to get my $35 back off my credit card.
I think you'll get it, huh? It's not that. That's not that much. I think.
See, just because you said it's $35, I think they're gonna hustle you even more now.
How about this?
No.
This is worse. 16 days ago, I believe I got scammed.
Oh.
Little bit of an Instagram type deal. Was scrolling through, and I saw this incredible deal on shirts.
Hunt.
I bought 6 shirts for $37.
Hunt, are you serious?
He was like, "It's a steal."
It's looking good.
You're actually.
I did not get a confirmation email. It did not come. So I've contacted the credit card. They're checking on it, and I've put the freeze on that. So we'll see how that goes.
You just did what my grandmother does on Facebook when she sees ads and just.
I mean, it's a great deal. I can use some new golf shirts.
Yeah, of course it's a great deal. It's fake.
Shirts.
It's a great deal because it's not real.
Another dude was like, "Oh yeah, that's a great deal. All right."
When I bought them, my wife was asleep. I was on the couch. I was like, I'm not gonna say anything about this. I literally put in my group text. I was like, I think I just got 6 shirts for $37. If I did, that's great. I may have also gotten scammed and my credit card is compromised. There have been no additional charges thus far in the 16 days, but the shirts have not shown up. And when I tried to call the number that's attached to my bank statement, it did not pick up. So
that's you're wow. I am astounded, Hunt, by.
But I took care of those 2 things this morning outside of riding my spring football preview and getting the show ready.
That's good. Did you get a run in as well?
I did get a run in this morning.
Okay, that's good.
It was 39 degrees when I hit the streets this morning.
Yeah, it was very cold. I thought we were out of the woods with that, but apparently not.
Dustin B says tough scene, Hunt, scammed by the Cambodians. I don't know if it was from Cambodia or not.
Who knows?
I don't want to disparage the lovely Cambodians, but I don't believe that I did the right thing. I think that I've made a mistake that someone who's in their upper 70s may or probably wouldn't.
Yes, that is exactly what you did.
Look, I'm not too proud. I was trying to make a deal.
It's a good deal. It's a good deal.
Trying to make a deal. We got time to do take it or leave it?
Yes.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Today's hottest stories in sports, news, and sometimes even Hunt's life. The question is, will he take them or leave them?
All right, first one here. Some people looking forward to this. Some people not expecting much. I'm in the latter camp there. Happy Gilmore 2 apparently is going to be coming out in July. Take it or leave it.
I'll take it. I'm going to watch it.
I'll take it.
I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, so obviously his grandmother's long gone at this point.
Yes.
So we're not going to bring her back. Obviously, his kid's going to be involved in some capacity, in like a long drive competition of some sort.
I think
maybe his kid's a hockey player.
I think it's very obvious where this movie's going to go. Okay, he's going to have been retired probably for a couple of years, maybe.
Yeah.
And something is going to bring him out of retirement. I don't know if it's
PGA Tour champions.
I don't know if it's going to be Shooter McGavin is going to be like calling him out and making him come back, or it's going to be something obnoxious, and he's going to have to come back and play, and then he's going to go. Yeah. So
I think his kid's a hockey player who takes his skate off and tries to stab somebody.
Maybe his son plays hockey, and then
he's got a kid. He's got a kid with the PGA Tour PR lady.
Yeah, and so he's got to teach this kid how to play golf.
Is she in it?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I haven't looked at the cast yet.
Wife?
I have not looked at the cast for who is going to be in it, but maybe somebody's going to end up losing a hand.
Is the alligator going to be in there with one eye? The alligators live a long time. I think. Is that going to be in there?
Yeah, of course. All right,
I'll probably watch it.
All right, let's get to those last one real quick. Oregon and Dan Lanning, 6-year, contract, nearly $11 million per year. It's Ross Dellinger with that reporting. Lanning will be in Eugene for that full contract. Take it or leave it.
I'll take it.
I
think he's doing a good job. I think that, Phil Knight's probably not going to make it that long. We'll see. What was it? How many years you say?
6.
Phil Knight can make it 6 years.
Yeah.
He can make it 6. And I think he'll do fine. I don't get the sense that he's taking it for the NFL, but you never know. You'd have to take a pay cut to go to the NFL probably. Yeah. I think he'll make it. I think they got a good coach. I think he's doing a good job. So that's it for Take It or Leave It here on this Thursday. We've got a busy show tomorrow. Preston Guy will be here. We'll preview LSU spring football. We'll also preview LSU and North Alabama at the box this weekend, as well as LSU and Texas A&M in the season finale for men's basketball. Appreciate Chris Blair for stopping by. Thanks to Joe Healy as well. Luke Johnson was with us in hour number 1. If you missed any of our show today, you can catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. All your Saints coverage, Hunt on Saints. All your LSU coverage, Hunt on LSU. Can't be any simpler than that. Make it happen. All right, we're going to get out of here. Matt's going to drive you home next on After Further Review. We will see you tomorrow, same time and same place for a Friday edition. God, we love Friday editions of the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
The Hunt Palmer Show.